All right. Yesterday we received the transcript of Qigong Master Chunyi Lin's Qi talk that he released as a free recording on the secret of bigu, or energy feasting, and I actually achieved bigu over 20 years ago now, when I did my intensive Qigong training. But what was really fascinating about his Qi talk is that he mentioned gravity, going to the source of gravity, and he connected it to sound. And so he said that the essence, or the jing of the element metal, is from sound, and that the essence, or Yuan Jing, of the earth is gravity, and that the earth element is tied to the pancreas and thinking. So in other words, the source of the Yuan Jing is also the source of thinking. And so the source of sound is the source of the essence of metal as alchemy. That's also anti-gravity. And through the metal, which is called the Yuan Jing. So the metal then is the lungs, the lung energy, that then feeds the kidney energy of the earth. The pancreas and the earth and the kidneys are connected through. So the source of the kidneys is the life force energy, whereas the source of the pancreas is the thinking. And this has to do with the parasympathetic nervous system. And this was connected to a near-death experience report I heard yesterday for the first time. This lady who has a YouTube channel where she uses cannabis medicinally and plays music. She's a musician. But she said that in 2020 she was had multiple illnesses and was in hospice. And then she did another interview where they asked her what were her illnesses, and she wasn't really clear about what the illnesses were. But at any rate, she says that she had her last breath, and what happened was she heard this high pitch noise. When she heard this really loud high pitch noise, then she also heard a loud crack or snap, and then she left her body at that point. Now, that's very similar to the strong Kundalini experience that you can induce from a strong use of psychedelics, like a plant-based DMT. If it's a strong dose of plant-based DMT, you will also hear that loud crack or snap as the third eye opening up. And she said that her heart had stopped, and so what happens is that the parasympathetic nervous system overactivates the heart, and that's why it stops. And then at that point, you experience the greatest love of your life that you'll ever experience at that moment when your spirit leaves the body. So the bigu training also, it is similar to a near-death experience. So for my training, I went 8 days on just a half a glass of water the whole time. I didn't have a half a glass of water each day. I just had a half a glass of water once, about, I don't know, 5 days in or something. And so what Chunyi Lin is explaining is the Yuan Jing has to be restored to like when you're 16 years old, at the peak of puberty. And since I was 29 years old and healthy, then I was able to restore my Yuan Jing through the Qigong training I had done. But the thing is that I didn't know, as a Westerner, I didn't know that's what was required, and I didn't know the special training to maintain my Yuan Jing, which is the celibacy. And so soon after that, I lost the alchemical pill, to put it in euphemism, just by making eye contact with a female. So that's how, unless you know like the secrets training that my idiot's guide manual goes into, the various techniques that I've corroborated, I've cross-correlated with the Indian yoga training tradition, with China, the Chinese neidan, Taoist Yoga, alchemy. So what I did was, instead of restoring my Yuan Jing, I used it up doing psychic healing. And the psychic healing is it's a lower level than the Yuan Qi, which is spiritual healing. And so I had a very wonderful experience when I was 29 years old, because I was able to restore the Yuan Jing and activate the Yuan Qi and my Yuan Shen, and the three are unified in alchemy. And that takes you up to about chapter 6 in the Taoist Yoga, Alchemy and Immortality book. And then to get to the Zhao Bichen, he says you can do that, use that manual on your own without the help of a teacher, to get to like chapter 12. And I didn't realize that I had experienced, I had a space-time vortex that I experienced, and I didn't know that was explained in chapter 11. And through my own research, I later called this the difference between special relativity and general relativity, because with general relativity, you're dealing with acceleration of the rest frame, whereas in special relativity, you're maintaining a constant rate of change in the rest frame or the measurement. So, in other words, I experienced this space-time vortex that is explained in chapter 11 of Taoist Yoga as overusing your Yuan Qi too fast. And so that, therefore, when your spirit leaves your body, the Wan Shen, there's not enough Yuan Qi to encase the spirit. So the Yuan Qi is the ether that's formless awareness as a force of the future and the past overlapping. And we have a certain amount of it as like the future in our body, sort of like our lifeline. That's our lifeline as a silver cord. The mercury, which is the aura, the deep aura of our spirit. And so the Qigong masters can read a person's aura, and if they are actually a spiritual master, they will have a golden aura, which means they can achieve this. They can restore their Yuan Jing fast and build it up and even create another physical body, which is called the Yang Shen, as bilocation. And this ability was explained in our original human culture, the San Bushmen. So what would happen is the males would train in the spiritual healing, and then they would heal the females, and the females would sing all night. And by singing, they're projecting their alchemical metal energy, because as Chunyi explained, the sound is the basis of the element of metal through the lungs. And so that's the Jing, the essence of the lungs is the sound energy. And so then the males, by dancing, are taking that in from the females, and then they're transforming it into the Yuan Qi that then they send back out. And so through meditation, by listening to the source of the sound, you can also build up more Yuan Qi through the Yin Qi, which is the Yang Jing. So the Yin Qi as Yang Jing is the source of the sound as an ionization through the ultrasound. So by the highest sound we can hear externally then resonates internally as ultrasound, and this creates an acoustic cavitation as quantum coherence of the microtubules in the body, which are metamaterial. They have a negative refractive index, so there's a time reversed negative frequency of the Yuan Qi overlapping, and then this goes into the blue light, and so the blue light is then able to absorb the virtual photons, which is called the Fa Shen in Taoism. The Fa Shen is as the Dharmakaya. The Dharmakaya being the essence, the void, the emptiness of the it's also called I think it's also called Nirmanakaya. I might be remembering that wrong, but the essentially it's the source of the sound that can never be seen. Or Buddha taught it as the inner ear method, but it's also the what Pythagoras taught. The listening in silence for 5 years was the core practice of the cave meditation of the Pythagoreans in the pre-Socratic West Asian, what's currently Turkey. So that connects, as Peter Kingsley explains, the source of the Pythagorean teaching is actually from Asia, so from the East. And so when Qigong Master Chunyi Lin did his bigu cave meditation, he started out doing 7 days, which is what I did, and then he moved up to finally he did his 28 days, which is 4 sets of 7. And so he did that at Mount Qingchen in China, and then when he finished that cave meditation, he was in full lotus the whole time for 28 days nonstop. And then when he came out of the cave and he was meditating in full lotus, then he levitated up, and he spiraled up 9 feet into the air. So if you study the Michael Grosso book, The Man Who Could Fly, about Saint Joseph de Cupertino, his ability to levitate was really about his celibacy, and he of course, as a monk, he avoided females, and then he had a very strict aversion to any kind of lust. And then of course the church didn't know what to do with him since he could levitate. They locked him up into a room, and since he was locked into a room, in a dark room, that was basically just like his cave meditation, so that just made him levitate more. When he was taken out of the room, he would just levitate even more. So because they didn't understand what was causing the levitation. And so this again is why this ability to levitate is so rare, because it depends on the male celibacy, and also the just nonstop meditation as the source of the sound. But the key factor here is that Chunyi Lin has officially connected the anti-gravity to the source of the sound through the metal, which in alchemy then is the gold, what's called the yang shen, which is also the ability to bilocate, to create another physical body through the yang shen, which is basically your external matter. It's like light that turns into physical matter through the fa shen. Again, the fa shen being the source of the sound is the Dharmakaya. In other words, the source of our thoughts, which is exactly what Ramana Maharshi was also teaching, and he called it Muna Samadhi, which means silence. silence samadhi as being the highest level of samadhi, past even nirvikalpa samadhi. And so that's pretty exciting that Qigong Master Chunyi Lin has corroborated my claim of the source of the sound as being tied to anti-gravity, because that's been the focus of my research for the past couple years, focusing on levitation and just the secret of the source of space-time from gravity as gravity. And it turns out, it's commonly considered that with Einstein, he stated that, gravity is curvature of space-time, but in fact, he still believed that gravity is a force, even though the common understanding of general relativity is that he stated that, gravity is just geometrical curvature. But in fact, the key factor for gravity is this change in time, the time as from the energy momentum tensor of gravity. And that source is actually quantum. And there's a great quote from Einstein that Professor Basil J. Hiley relies on, and so does the Indian physicist Professor B.J. Siddharth, or B.G. Siddharth. And B.G. Siddharth also predicted the discovery of the acceleration of the universe. And so he should have got the Nobel Prize for that. But, since he's from India, he believes, he was discriminated against. And at any rate, he also has the same quote from Einstein, where Einstein is admitting that Heisenberg's non-commutative algebra is the truth of reality, and that means we need to reject the space-time continuum that was the basis of modern physics ever since Plato and Archytas and all the way up through Newton, and of course the standard understanding of general relativity. But because of quantum physics, we now understand that non-commutativity is the truth of reality, as the frequency and time being non-local and non-commutative as a wormhole. And then this brings us to Nobel Physicist Gerard de Hooft's recent talk on as part of the the Fetzer Fund. And let's see, was I able to finish that talk? I was listening to it last night. I did a blog post on it, and I don't think I finished. I'm not sure if I finished the talk. But this lecture is, I was re-listening to it, and he does the best job in this lecture of explaining his idea. But essentially, he's saying that the key point is that when a particle goes into a black hole, it is attached. It affects a particle going out of the black hole as Hawking radiation. And so normally we think of the information as being lost, which is what the big information black hole paradox debate is about. And so Roger Penrose thinks the information is lost at the end of the universe, when the universe, all the matter in the universe eventually goes into a black hole singularity. But the Gerard de Hooft, he's arguing that actually since the information is actually on the event horizon, because it becomes entangled. It's inherently entangled with the Hawking radiation going out of the black hole through the future. So there has to be an entanglement of the future and the past overlapping, and that's non-commutative. And so he says that this causes a noticeable shift at the micron, at the micron scale of the particle leaving the black hole versus the particle going in. In other words, the trajectories are connected through the micron scale. Now that micron wavelength happens to be the inverse of the ultrasound frequency, which then, so that directly connects the cosmology of black holes to the third eye via the ultrasound frequency connection. That's actually, as Andrija Puharich realized, it's actually the time reversed signal as a quantum undertone. So when you hear the highest pitch externally, it resonates internally as ultrasound, but this creates a undertone that's actually from the future as a time reverse negative frequency. And that's what the Om of the universe is, that we can listen to through the heart. Through the heart. So when we have a strong heart awakening, we will hear this loud Om sound that Chan Master Nan Hua Chin, he explains that this is the conversion of the Yuan Jing to the Yuan Shen. He doesn't use the term Yuan or original or essence, the original, but he calls it's the conversion of Jing to Shen. So this Om, the secret of that conversion, that once the third eye opens up and the Yuan Shen is activated, and this can be achieved through a strong dose of the DMT based plant medicine also, which is what I did. I tested that out against the full lotus third eye Qigong, and so I corroborated that that there's a strong Kundalini activation, and then you hear the loud pitch, the high pitch noise, and then the loud crack or snap. It sounds like a gunshot almost, but that opens up the third eye. And then the Wan Shen gets activated. It's not the same as meditation, but it's like a strong dose of plant-based DMT can activate that as a tool. So if the shamans that train in that traditionally, they also have to do celibacy to restore their Yuan Jing, and they have to do a fasting diet as purification. So they're mimicking this deep level of meditation. So then in our original human culture, as I mentioned before, when they, in the San Bushmen, the males, normally they would heal the females, but sometimes a male would go off on its own, and then by going off on his own, he built up his power, the Yuan Jing, even more, and that's why the male going off on his own would be able to achieve the bilocation, or the Yang Shen, which in the San Bushmen, they just said that such a male would be able to transform himself into a lion, and the lion would then appear, back in the village, and this is why they would get scared of when a male would go off on his own to become an even more powerful, spiritual shaman. That's when they would get scared, because he would be able to actually become a lion, like physically manifest as a lion. But when they're still in the village, what they do is they communicate with the lions to prevent the lions from attacking the humans. And this is what the most famous Buddhist meditation monk of Thailand would also do. Fra Archan Moon, he would take his monk students to the most dangerous parts of the jungle in Thailand that were infested with tigers, because he realized that when his students had the most fear, then that would activate their samadhi on a deeper level, because what you're doing is you're creating when you have that deep level of fear, you create a very strong freeze reaction, which is the reptilian right side vagus nerve, and you want that to be very strongly activated. And that's actually what the samadhi is that deep right side vagus nerve activation. And that's why there's a direct connection between fear of death and the fear as through the emptiness, the kidney energy. So in other words, you have to build up that Yuan Jing through celibacy of the kidney energy, which is also called the internal reproductive organ in Taoism. But it's what regulates the biophoton signal through the adrenal glands, that then activates the prostate gland for ejaculation for the male through the sympathetic nervous system. So you have to reverse that signal back into the parasympathetic and store it up. And that's why it has to be done in silence, because just talking about it like I just did, will then trigger the biophoton signal. And so you have to do the dancing and the standing active and the fasting in order to reverse that the trigger of the biophoton signal. So that's why the ability to levitate is so rare, because you have to keep building up that energy and do it in a safe environment where you can overcome the fear of death directly, by continually recharging the energy back into the body and storing up the Yuan Qi back into the body. Is literally like a time reversed signal. And so when Chunyi Lin shared how he was actually communicated with his ancestors that he had never met in his own life, or maybe he had, but like grandparents and that kind of thing, but also the Taoist masters, that from the lineage, and that even included Lao Tzu, the original author of the Tao Te Ching. He said he physically manifested and touched him on the top of his head, which is where the spirit leaves through the fontanelle, it opens back up through the top center of the head. And so this stuff is very, like, most people can't even imagine it, much less understand the physiology along with the psychology and the spiritual purification necessary. And so we're trying to replicate this anti-gravity ability using technology. But for me, as Roger Penrose explains, our external measurement causing the collapse of the quantum wave function is through. This is explained by both Penrose and the Gerard de Hooft, but in his talk he's saying, essentially the quantum superposition as the external measurement is inherently limited by quantum uncertainty of position and momentum, which itself originates from this non-local non-commutativity. So it's only through meditation that we're able to directly access the source of the non-local non-commutativity as the emptiness, because we're relying on the source of sound itself through our thoughts. Whereas when we make an external measurement, we're relying on the invariance of light as the speed of light, as the acceleration, the assumed squaring of light as a symmetric rest frame. And this is the basis of relativity. And so Gerard de Hooft, he went into this, how to try to navigate those two paradoxes. And and then Roger Penrose, as he explains, that quantum physics isn't adequate because of this quantum measurement problem, that in fact that the source of time is asymmetric and non-commutative, and the source of mass of space-time is actually due to quantum frequency, based on the de Broglie-Einstein relation of the equation, that Planck's constant times frequency equals mass times the speed of light squared. So when you have that Einstein-de Broglie relation, you're actually showing the direct non-commutative connection that underlies the acceleration or squaring of the speed as the speed of light as the invariance, because there's the secret gravitational mass of light, as Gerard de Hooft explains, is from this de Broglie law of phase harmony. So you have that negative frequency and time reverse signal from the future, and it's non-commutative, so it doesn't have any symmetric rest frame that as an external measurement. But since physics has already proven that when we listen, through listening, we can hear up to 10 times faster than Fourier uncertainty, which is the time frequency uncertainty rate of converting frequency into a symmetric spatial measurement as time. So in fact, as Günter Nimps proved with his superluminal sound signals, the information of sound is not actually measured as a squaring symmetric spatial measurement, but rather it's a non-commutative phase that's directly inverse to the frequency, just as de Broglie logically inferred, and therefore there has to be a time reversed negative frequency that's always guiding matter. But in meditation, we realize it's not just guiding matter, but it has the ability to create new matter. And this is what the Fa Shen is it's actually that inner ear method of the time reversed negative frequency through meditation. And so this is the secret of what I originally called sound current non-dualism in my master's thesis, because what I was discussing was the order of logical types based on the beats of the harmonics, of the overtones that create a dialectical indeterminate reflection through a dialectical reversal of the perfect fifth and the perfect fourth through the tritone, based on the higher order of logical types of the beats. So like with the octave, you have 0 beats because it's perceived as the same pitch, but it actually originates, as Alon Khan explains, through this 2-3 infinity of the direct third harmonic with the octave that has a non-commutative inversion, so that the perfect fourth is actually the time reversed negative frequency of the octave directly. And due to that time reverse signal, then you have the inherent non-locality as the source of the sound. And so this is what in my master's thesis I called the I was quoting I think it was Edward Rothstein's book on the, or maybe it was Ernol Levin's book, but they called it the paradox of the poles, in terms of the tritone having harmonic overtones to the fundamental tone, whereas the perfect fifth and the perfect fourth having dissonant overtones to the fundamental tone, which is another way of saying that the perfect fourth is never a natural overtone of the fundamental tone due to this non-commutativity, which was covered up at the foundation of Western science, because the secret origin of the commutative geometry mathematics is from the wrong music theory that Philolaus and Archytas used, and then Plato promoted as the basis of a logon for the new definition of aperon, the cosmic mother emptiness as the source of sound getting converted to an external irrational magnitude measurement that was the basis then for Newton's inverse square law for gravity. And so the ecological crisis and social injustice is due to this inverse exponential function of the logarithms, with the exponential growth of wealth created through the exponential growth of technology that then leads to what is commonly called the singularity or the matrix, or the music logarithmic spiral as the structural basis for the actual matrix plan, as the apocalyptic recreation of the eternal Adam on in the Garden of Eden on Earth, through which is essentially, from this original attempt to contain infinity through an external measurement. That's a symmetric rest frame of space-time. And so, as Penrose explains, that the gravitational entropy is the opposite of the entropy of matter. So our attempt to decrease the entropy of matter using technology as so-called progress of linear time has actually accelerated the time on Earth through a contraction of space, or the destruction of ecology as life, as the space on Earth, the biosphere, so that the entropy of global warming is actually measured through the photon radiation and not through the CO2 molecule itself, which is the big confusion about abrupt global warming, because the Earth as a closed system of the biosphere actually has the entropy rate based on the frequency of the light, with the Earth emitting the infrared frequency that then powers the mitochondria. And this is the basis, the foundation of the Tumo Tibetan yoga, what Wim Hof teaches with the breathing method to then activate the vagus nerves, strong right side parasympathetic vagus nerve activation that then creates this internal heat, strong internal heat through the infrared, and the fourth phase of water that then splits the water into the protons and the electrons to then directly activate the Yuan Qi as the virtual photons by the splitting of the water internally. And that then increases the infrared light that directly powers the mitochondria. So that's the secret of the bigu meditation. And you can actually feel this stream of water coming down through the third eye, the pineal gland, when you activate the bigu. And I just called it a reverse electrolysis at the time, because I didn't know. I'm like, somehow the hydrogen and oxygen are getting combined back together, and I didn't understand what exactly was happening. And there was actually a academic conference held by Professor Rustum Roy, a chemical engineer or material science, on bigu, studying the Yanshin Qigong that Qigong Master Chunyi Lin trained in the Yanshin originally, and they argued it was due to gamma radiation of some kind of. They couldn't figure it out, but so I'm going to leave it there since I've talked for an hour. Thank you for your time.